Yes guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be going over the trade recap from Friday the 8th of August from the long that we took inside of the first day of macro to secure 51 handles. Firstly, what we can see was, going onto the daily time frame, that price was overall bullish. I had an overall bullish bias and I was wanting price to target the previous day high, which was at 23670. So on replay mode, obviously it's already taken it, but and when we were actually looking at pre-market, my bias was to look for the previous day high. Then looking prior into the session, because obviously when you have your daily bias, you then want to look for a lower time frame model to match that higher time frame bias. So what I could see here was Asia highs has not been swept on NQ, okay? But then Asia highs has been swept on ES. So that meant we have a bearish SMT. However, coming then into the AM session, once price takes any sort of session liquidity, any 15-minute high or low is a valid sweep, personally for me. Or even a 5-minute low or high, that's a sweep of liquidity, is valid for me. So what I could then see was we had this point of sell-side liquidity at 23524 that was swept just before we came into macro. What we also see here is that ES has not taken this point, so therefore we have a bullish SMT. So zooming into the lower time frame model, and then the higher time frame of the daily candle was also bullish. So looking at this overall, coming into the macro, I'm looking for longs. So coming into macro, we've taken that point of Asia highs, but Asia highs has already been swept before the session. So that draw was irrelevant for me. And then what you then could say was that London highs got swept. But I'm looking at NQ right now, and I guess to an extent it was a little bit of a gamble to be taking longs here, because the opposing draw of London highs has been met, so supposedly you should be looking for shorts. But looking at NQ, it was very clean, and I did take, it was a lower probability setup, I am going to be honest, but looking overall at the setup, it was clean to take, and I was willing to take that risk, and if I got stopped out, you'd be taking accountability for that. So what then we can see was a displacement higher through the swing high, and then a 1 minute bullish fair value gap that presented as we were coming into macro. So it actually tapped in 1 minute before and then still there, but then coming into macro, it's actually just taken off completely, and we didn't manage to get a retap on that first presented gap. So we're then looking at the next point that we could take, which was this displacement through this short-term high, which was paired with a mitigation block. So a tap off this 1 minute bullish gap would be valid for us to go long. And this trade was still valid until it takes the previous day high. If it takes the previous day high, then we're not going to be taking longs here. But then what we could see was we finally got a tap back on this 1 minute bullish gap. So I was in for longs there with my stop at the short-term low for 24 handles, and then TP at the previous day high for 50 handles. And then my break-even point was 50% of the range of the trade of that first short-term high. So playing this trade out, we can see that ES has a lot of distance to do before it gets to that previous day high. So I was basically prepared to see a lot of chop, because ES has a lot of distance to make, and I think whilst ES is pushing higher, NQ is just going to be chopping around. So I wasn't surprised that price wasn't moving the cleanest. But we then took that first point of that short-term high. So once we took this point, I reduced risk, but then straight after that we then took break even, so we were risk free there. Now simply, I'll just sat on my hands and waited for price to do its thing. There's no point of closing early or taking partials, because there's no valid points to really even take partials here. You should be having one TP. If you have a further distance and there's not as volatile for price, then there's a clear point to be taking partials, then that's fair enough. But here, when price is looking a bit more volatile, I wouldn't say there's any point of taking partials. So right here, I'm still just break even. I'm not moving my stop. And then right here, some people would have got hesitant and saw that we were coming lower. I was a bit iffy. I was thinking, oh, that is a hard push to the downside. But simply price came down. I would have closed out if it inversed this gap, but we respected it. And once it respected it, it shot straight up and took final TP, just like that. So overall, it was a very clean trade. We then had a huge bearish SMT between NQ and ES when, if you're going into the secondary macro. So what my other plan would have been is that if we didn't get tapped in for this trade, I would have looked for shorts off the previous day high, which actually looked much cleaner and would have been a lot more inside of my model, which is reversals and just straight up unicorn setup. But this was a bit more of a continuation. It wasn't the cleanest sweep, like a clear sweep of, say, London lows, and then we looked for a trade higher. It was more of a continuation model, but it was still a trade there that I was willing to take, and it worked out in our favor. So there's nothing much you can really put wrong past that. So looking at the secondary macro, we can see that we've got a sweep of a short-term high. And we have this swing low where we've got a clear displacement lower, and a 1 minute bearish fair value gap. But again, same as the first day of macro, there was no tap on the fair value gap inside a macro as of yet. So we're simply going to wait for that point until it gets tapped. Okay, so that entry point is valid. You could take that inside macro, and then I'd have my stop loss at the high, and then TP at first presented low. That offers that 1 to 2. This short-term low right here would be my break-even point. So let's see what we get. Okay, so Nasdaq has taken that first short-term low, so we're not going to go break-even. However, we are going to reduce our risk just above this candle's high for only 8 handles risk. And there we have it. So break-even's now been taken, so we're reducing risk fully there. So let's see what we get for the rest of this trade. And there we have it. Final TP smashed. And that is the 2 scenarios you could have taken on Friday's session, where we have the long inside of the first day macro and then the shorts inside the second day macro. Now, personally, looking back at these trades, I would have much preferred to take the shorts, because that is a model that I would trade every single day, 100%. Whereas this is more of a continuation model. Although we did have the sweep of sell side, bullish SMT, when price did come up and take out London highs, it would make it valid to look for shorts. But I still took the longs, because the longs, just from experience, I've seen this model play out 100 times before, and it's just a different variation of the ICT silver bullet. So it was still valid to take, but again, the shorts were just as valid as well. So a green day is still a green day. They're both just as clean as each other, and that's that. There's nothing more I can really say on that. And simple as that, guys. Just have trust in your model, because I was getting battered all week. I think I had around 3-4 losses, and that one win recovered all of those losses. So make sure you're managing your trades right. Make sure you're managing your trades correctly, and that you're holding out trades for the full risk to reward. Because if you're closing out early, you're taking less risk to reward home, and then if you're not closing, and then if you're getting fully stopped out, it's going to ruin your profitability long run, in the long term. So making sure your trades are playing out, and that you're 100% committed to it either hitting TP or getting stopped out in profit or break even or getting stopped out in general, you're going to become more robotic and a lot more loyal to your system, if that makes sense. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this trade recap, and we'll see what we get for the next week. Lovely stuff.